All right, let's get ourselves going. So this is day one, Brent to Catfish, starring Marty and Scooter, looking sharp with the beard on there. Clearly not right now.
Yeah,
So I went to Google Maps first so that I could show where I live. Can you see my mouse? Or no?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see the cursor.
Excellent. Cursor is what I meant. So I live here in Waterloo. You live there in Deep River. We met not at Brent, actually. We met up here, right?
Just on the turnoff.
Yeah. And then it was like a 40-minute drive or something like that.
It was 40 minutes because I was hauling ass because I felt bad being about 20 minutes late to meet you, and considering the distance that we both traveled, that was a shame.
Yeah, but it was also because you were going based off of what Google said a responsible driver would take to get there. I think there were very few points where I was going less than 130 kilometers per hour on the highway.
Well, I appreciated that, and I wanted to reciprocate by going about 85 in a 40 zone through that.
Yeah, man, we were doing like Algonquin drift around some of those turns on the way in. It was wild.
I mean, we were perfectly safe in every way.
Yes, that's also.
Yes, we met at the Brent Access Road Algonquin Park office, which is a few hundred meters from the Highway 17. And yeah, there you were, looking beautiful as I pulled up.
Nice. All right, so here's our map of the trek that we went on. So Brent is up here in the top left on Cedar Lake, and we crossed Cedar Lake and basically went up the Petawawa all the way to Burnt Root over here, and then had a hell of a day of portaging. I think we did something like 5 kilometers or something of portage to end up on the Nipissing River, which we took back to Brent on day 5 of our excursion. So day 1 was really only half a day, right?
It was let's just talk a little bit about the overall route. This is a route that I've been looking at for the last couple of years. I like the name that you gave it, but also the up the pet, down the nip. That's another name for it. And as I mentioned to you, the last person I talked about this route with was setting off the next day on that route, and they had an 8-day journey of this route planned. And our good friend Stoner Kid, forget his name.
I think it was Brent Murphy, but I'm not sure.
Brent. Murray, not Murphy.
Oh, it was Murray, was it? Okay. Good.
So our good friend Brent Murray, he was doing it in 7 days on his solo, but he spent a lot of time fishing in lakes that didn't have any fish in
them. This is true. We fortunately found some places with fish, so that's good. But on day 1, because I drove from Waterloo, which was totally legally done in the allocated 5 minutes and 39 minutes as per Google.
5 minutes and 39 minutes, that would have been good.
5 hours and 39 minutes rather than. I didn't break any laws of physics. We started out, I think it was around 12:30 in the day, right?
12:40, we were in the canoe crossing the Grand Cedar Lake. Cedar Lake is one of the big lakes in Algonquin. There are about a dozen to a half dozen really big lakes, Cedar, Grand, and Opiongo being three of the well-known ones. And Cedar has a reputation for whipping up with really big waves, but it was a fine day when we set off. Nice blue sky, not so many waves. We did have a little bit of a left and right crossing of the Cedar Lake because we hadn't yet found our rhythm in our canoe. The balance was just a little bit off. So it wasn't the most direct crossing, but not too bad either.
I didn't really notice. because we were in such a hurry to get ourselves in gear, it turns out that we didn't take very many pictures on the first day. So what I did was go to the internet and find others who have taken pictures so that we can talk about those places as we go. One of those people is a gent named Bob McElroy. And actually, Martin, I would recommend that you look him up because he's done a few trips and he has them posted online. Things like Brent to Burnt Route, which he did first in 1975 and then again a couple years ago. And he has pictures in both of those trips that he posts so that you can see how things have changed over the last 45 years, which is actually really cool.
That's amazing.
That was really cool, yeah.
So
here is a little map of the Brent campsite, and we came down Brent Road and then out here to the launch site. So that's the launch site here. And when we left, we jumped in your canoe and we actually had to come around that point, which is down here, and sort of go across the lake that way in order to get to the Petawawa.
Yeah, that's right. You can barely not see the mouth of the Petawawa from the launch point. So the mouth of the Petawawa is what you see on the bottom right. That's the small Petawawa coming out into Cedar Lake. And the launch point, as you can see, is kind of in a cove, and it's a little bit recessed from the point, and therefore we can't see the Petawawa. If you look at the map, there's something that unfortunately Scott missed out on, and next time we're up there, you'll have to check it out. So the Brent store, shown right there on the map, is where I've done most of my launching, because that is the Algonquin Outfitters, and I've done a lot of trips where I rented a boat from there. And there is a guy who runs it named Jake, who is 84 years old and still running the Outfitters, still doing portages, still whipping canoes on the top of trucks to transport them up to the next lake over. And it's an amazing institution in himself, and also the quirkiness of the store is something to behold.
Cool. I'll definitely check that out in the future. One thing to note here is in the bottom right of the map, it says maximum 20 horsepower permitted. So because of that, Martin and I actually had to take our time going across the lake. What are you going to do? All right.
We had to leave 3 of the horses behind us.
That's right. Yeah. We got to do what you got to do. All right. So once across the lake, we basically start with 700 and some meter portage, right? You pull in off the lake and then immediately pack all your shite and off you go. And it turns out that the first portage, it's a little bit uphill, but it wasn't really bad at all. I would say that I felt them worse on the first day than I did for the rest of the whole trip. And a note for us in the future, I jogged for 20 minutes every morning for 3 weeks in advance of this, just try to make sure I had legs and wind enough to do it. And it was a good thing that I did that because there are a couple massive portages in here and you need to be a little bit healthy in order to do them, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those portages, well, we'll get to the second or third portage in a minute, but those portages are serious, right? You pull into these areas and it's not a beach. It's a rocky landing. You got to pull onto the rocky landing. You got to have legs with muscles and coordination to be able to get out of the canoe without yanking it onto the rocks and making serious scratches underneath, which we did a little bit anyways. And yeah, it's a serious amount of work even to go a kilometer with whatever 70 pounds on your back.
Yep, for sure. So after we got to the top of this first portage, it was sort of a gentle paddle, I guess, to the next one. which is where there was a waterfall.
Yep.
I think that's the picture of the waterfall. We didn't take this, by the way. This is again from Bob McElroy.
No, we didn't actually get that close to the waterfall. So the portage
go up around it, right?
Yeah, the portage was maybe 150 meters, maybe, or 100 meters away from the waterfall. You got a nice distal view from it.
Yeah.
And we were still worried about, not worried, but we were still trying to make good time because we had timed out this for a 4.5, 5-hour day, and we're unsure how the portages were going to go. With one key thing there that we could talk about is on that first portage, we loaded up for the first time, right? And you don't know whether you're going to be able to do a single portage or a double portage. And of course, a double portage really is a triple portage, which is there, back, there again. Yeah. And so that takes a long time, especially on something that's 700-800 meters or 2 kilometers. So we definitely wanted to not waste any time that first day.
Yeah, and the 2.3 kilometer one that we're about to talk about, we're not quite there yet. That one's all uphill and was a real pig of a portage. That was the worst one in the entire trip, and it was right up front. And I literally thought to myself, holy shit, if it's like this the whole time. But proud to say that all of our portages were done in one. We didn't do any doubles, so that meant we could really haul. And it was good because on our first day, we got to our campsite nice and early-ish. We're able to go for a swim, etc., but we'll get there. So
maybe because we might as well say lots of things and then we can edit stuff out, is at that first portage, we ran into a couple from Southern Ontario who had driven up that day as well from Toronto, right, central Toronto. They were, I think, from Spain or something like that, but it's we didn't actually confirm that. And they were going on an 8-day up all the way up the Nipissing into Radiant Lake and around. And we, all the way up to Petawawa into Radiant Lake and around. And those guys seemed friendly, and we saw them on the next 2 or 3 portages. Nothing really else to say about them, except we saw them the next day leaving their or passing our campsite before never seeing them again. Yep. And I guess we'll never see them again.
We may not. Okay, so after we got up around the falls, it was another short and sweet paddle to get to like I said, the worst portage that was in the trip.
So let's talk about the little paddles real quick. So those paddles are up the Petawawa, but there's almost no flow. You really can't feel the flow against. If you look into the water, you see that the reeds are bent into the way of the flow. So there's a little bit of a flow, but it's obviously forest on both sides, like small rises on the land, not flat, and reeds and lilies on either side of a river that is maybe 20-30 meters across, something like that.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that the landscape really changes along the whole trek that we did. So we start off on the Petawawa, which is rocky, coniferous trees, so lots of pine, lots of spruce, I think we saw, and later on it was very different. So yep. We'll leave that as a foreshadow. Yeah. So here is the Petawawa, as written here, also affectionately known as Unicorn Hill. So this is 2.3 kilometers uphill. The path looks like what we've got here on the bottom right, and it basically looks like that for what feels like forever. So when we started off, I think I went in the lead, and I just started walking, and I thought I'll just stop when I get to the top of the hill, and then we can take a break. Unfortunately, the top of the hill doesn't feel like it ever came. Uh, we hiked forever, and eventually I just sort of collapsed. So I'm gonna reinforce that. Unicorn Hill equals bitch.
And what happened to me was that I popped my canoe on the top of my shoulders and walked about 20 to 30 meters, and there were some chanterelles, and I thought, got to pick those 2 or 3 chanterelles, but there 2 or 3 chanterelles aren't worth taking the canoe off my shoulder. So went down and kneeled and picked the chanterelles up, and then another 50 or 100 meters, the same thing happened. So I was doing squats with a fucking canoe on my shoulders to get these chanterelles, and then at one point there was a big patch of them, and then I put the canoe off, but I took the canoe on and off and squatted with it so much in the first like 300 meters that I was tired at the beginning of the portage. And then I'm like, okay, fuck it. I'm not gonna take any more chanterelles. Like, I gotta catch up with Scott. And I had seen that he was going at a solid clip, but not anything fast. So I'm like, I'm not resting until I catch up with Scott. I gotta catch up with Scott. And then the hill just kept on going up and up and up. And Unicorn Hill is famous for being a complete asshole, but I had forgotten about it. I've done this portage coming the other way once many years ago, and it wasn't ingrained in my memory like this will be.
Yeah.
And by the time I caught up to you, sitting there on the side of the trail, not quite at the top, I had sweat literally pouring down off my chin like it was a faucet.
Literally, yeah. So when you first sat down, you couldn't really speak. You took your stuff off, and he sort of sat beside me on the tree root and just sort of leaned, and the sweat was pooling at your chin and just running off in a steady stream. I was like, man, are you okay? Because I'd had about 5 minutes at this point, which was just about enough for me to catch my breath, because I was sweating like a ditch pig too. And it was rough. We weren't at the top of the hill yet, and I was thinking, man, we're not even at the halfway point of this, and this is miserable. I'm gonna die in the woods.
And then here we're having some real concerns that if this is what portages are like for the whole trip, we're going to be in trouble, because we had timed out this trip such that we had about just under 5 hours of moving every day, but that was if we had one-way portages.
That's right.
And especially on day 3, if we had to do 3-day portages, that was going to be like 8 hours of moving, and that's going to be tough. So yeah, it made us a little bit nervous.
Yeah. So I was starting to get nervous, because we're at like, I don't know, kilometer 6 maybe of 70 that we're going to do. So this is a reenactment of not quite halfway up Unicorn Hill. I found this picture, and I was happy to see that Bob McElroy also couldn't make the first rest point and just sort of collapsed there for a little while. So warning to anybody who's watching this in the future that is considering doing this, if you're an old fat bastard, you better watch out. It's going to get you.
Excellent. I think he has the same blue pack as we do.
It looks like, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So basically, once we got past Unicorn Hill, it was a relatively easy go. There was another portage. I couldn't find any pictures of that. But after that point, you come out into Catfish.
But let's just go back a second. We rested there for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we're like, all right, we must be almost halfway, or maybe a little bit more than halfway. And so then we put things back up on our shoulders, started going, and like 100 meters later, there was a bench.
Yeah. So this is sort of on me because I collapsed 100 meters before a bench and then Martin caught up. And I walked past that thing and I thought, son of a bitch. Right, we're sitting on tree roots. But realistically, at that point, I didn't care where I was sitting. I just wanted to sit for a little while.
Absolutely. And that was at the top of Unicorn Hill. And then it was flatter for the second half of the portage. So it was less dramatic, and arrived at the portage end, and there's a Polish guy and his girlfriend there that we had brief words with, angry words,
No.
and then off we went.
Yeah. So like I said, I couldn't find any pictures past Unicorn Hill until we get to Catfish.
Right, but we stopped for lunch after. So we had a stretch and then another little portage, and then we popped out on I guess that lake there, and just paddled across the lake to a rock on the other side of the lake, and sat there and had our first break.
Yep.
And that was really nice. It was the first time I ever had Newfie bread. Scott brought this bread that is called hardtack or Newfie bread, and it is hard ass Newfie bread.
Yes.
And in fact, he cut his own mouth eating it. That's not supposed to happen. Food is not supposed to make you bleed. But that was good, and we tried our hand at fishing for the first time and caught these tiny minnow-sized fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. That was nice. We pulled into basically a rock outcropping, and just basically hung out there, did a little bit of fishing, had our Newfie bread, pack of sausages that you'd brought along with you. Yeah, that was nice. Got some water. It was the first time I'd seen your platypus, and that's not a euphemism. I'd seen that platypus before.
Hockey changer.
Hockey team, yeah. Anyway, so we get on to Catfish Lake. The picture that I've got in red is from campsite 1 looking down across the lake. Okay, so this is actually where I think our friends from Spain camped. I think they were.
We saw them pass as we were hanging out at lunch on the other side of the lake. We saw them come and descend the portage and go ahead. And I think when we started out in Catfish Lake, we saw that they had pulled in over there.
Yeah. So looking out this way is down across the lake. The point on the right is this point here. The point on the left is that point there. I think there's actually, I think you see sort of 2 of them. Further down the lake behind that tree are a couple islands. We're further down here. I think we were on campsite 3 on that map, right?
So if there's a map that indicates that there's an alligator, the alligator is before our campsite. So I think you're right, it's campsite 3, and I think that the small text say there's an alligator machine that is like submerged or so near the first island, and we were on the second island, and that was a beauty of this campsite. As you can see, island campsites always have a lure to them, and some of them aren't as good as you'd think, right? Some of them are just like next to a swamp.
Yep.
And this was a campsite that faces kind of south, faces the way we were going. So you pass the island and then you come back onto the island, and just a lovely rocky campsite with a fairly steep ascent to the plateau where you would put the tents and have your campfire.
Yeah, but it was nice in the sense that there was almost like a little rocky plateau toward the southern end that you could jump off of into the water to go for a swim, and we also fished off there. So here's you, Martin, setting up your tent and inflating your mattress. Me being a lazy bastard, I haven't set my tent up yet. I'm just sort of hanging out. You can see yours is done in the background. Mine actually ended up over here when I finally got myself together and got it set up. But overall, I would say lovely campsite. I really enjoyed that campsite. Turned out that someone had left a bear hang there for us that we also left afterward.
Well,
I came to learn that it was actually Martin's bear hang, but not until the end of the next day.
So the story there is, I grab my rope and tell Scott I'm going to go find a bear hang, by which I mean find a nice tree that I can throw my rope over and use as a bear hang, and go out, and there was a nice tree. Sometimes it's hard to find on an island a tree that has a substantial enough branch far enough, that extends far enough from the trunk so that you can have your food hung up there. And the rule of thumb is that it should be at least 2 meters from the trunk and at least 4 meters off the ground. And so in these pine forests, the red pines have these kind of spindly little branches that are not good enough usually. And the white pines, when they get big, the dead branches fall off near the bottom. So it can be really tough to find one. So I was very happy to have found one. And then I came back and told Scott found the bear hang. And then when he later went for a little walk around the island and yelled, "I found a rope here," I thought he was being facetious because I had just put the rope there.
What I heard was, "I'm going to find the bear hang," which I thought meant, oh, every campsite must have these optional ropes there that you can tie your food up and pull it up if you want. But I didn't know that, because on these islands, every campsite, or on these campsites, there are thunder boxes, right? So there are places to poop around. I'd seen that, and then I saw the rope, and I thought, oh, okay, they've done this on all of the campsites for people. But lesson learned.
You did come back and say, I think I pulled the rope too far. I'm not sure we'll be able to reach it again. And we did have to throw the rope back over the branch. That only took a couple goes with a rock.
You're well practiced there for sure.
Yep. But yeah, that was a beautiful campsite. We did some swimming, did some fishing. The one shame was that all of these mushrooms that we picked and made me so tired for Unicorn Hill, for some reason, were just completely waterlogged. It had been raining, I guess, and when I had put them in the bag.
Or maybe someone sweated their ass off into the bag.
Possible too. So maybe it was seasoned with my sweat. But we didn't actually use those mushrooms because it was they were just so soaked with water.
We didn't eat them, but we did use them.
Yes, that's
the
true.
next morning.
Yeah.
Here's a video. Can you see that video going, Martin? Yep. So this is just a little 360 of our campsite. That's south, and down over that point was where we were swimming and fishing. I've taken this after I've set my tent up, as you can see. There's Martin's butt.
Good butt.
Nice. So that was our campsite.
The other thing that was nice about this campsite was somebody had left a lot of wood.
Yes. Somebody had left wood. We did not leave any wood.
There were a couple scraps left that we
There were a few scraps left. You're right.
But that was nice. It rained overnight a little bit. So the tents were a little bit wet when we woke up the next morning, but it was a nice morning when we woke up. It was a little bit gray, but great to be out in the woods. Scott got up a little earlier than I did and went and got the food, and not the rope.
Not the rope. I did a great job.
Therein my problem. So we got up and then had breakfast, and then we found a friend.
Yep. And I am going to save that